Yeah, response video to the modern mystic. Unless you're following along, just forget about watching this video. It really is to Nick and only Nick. Because you really have to have the context of this ongoing conversation about how the brain works and finding proper metaphors for explaining it. So, I'll play this video. I guess I'll preface it by saying, yes, this response was of no value. I mean, do I really have to play movie clips? Alright, there's a movie called, what, The Great Race? Natalie Wood, somebody, Nigel, somebody, whatever. Pie fight in that movie. I think it's that movie. And, yeah, it's a mess. Okay, it doesn't, you have to do better than that. Our brain does better than that. And so it's just, I just don't see any point in this analogy of ideas themselves just showing up and saying, I win because I threw a pie. That's not what happens. There's an ordered hierarchy. There's a filtering process that takes place. I could say, my brain could say, Tinkerbell is fuckable. There, it said it. Now what happens to that idea in my head? Well, my brain says, wait a minute, she's 9 inches tall. Totally unfuckable. Forget about it. Okay, just forget about it. That ain't gonna work. No, go someplace else. So somehow my brain says, this doesn't logically fit. It's not, has no continuity in this game. It will not be given a pie. It no longer has a horse in the race. It is just kind of slid off the edge until it falls and drops and blah, 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 blah. And my brain's doing that through a process. And maybe it's the other programs are all ganging up and they're all throwing pies at that idea and knocking it off. But I'm going to argue, I think there's a better way to metaphor. There's probably a better way to explain it than that. That has more to do with how does something have throwing capacity? Where does it get its throwing arm from? It's not the idea itself that has a throwing arm. It's what happens to it when it shows up. Okay, it says its thing. Here's my theory. And then somehow its theory is empowered through a process the brain goes through. Okay, so the throwing arm is acquired. And this is what I'm trying to get to with the theme thing, and I ended the video with, I think, a very good metaphor of the boxers. So again, I'm not going back to somebody making the decision. The boxers are in your subconscious, okay? They don't actually show up in your consciousness and make a decision, and you're in the middle. The point I'm making is that the argument between these Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk is leaking into our consciousness. We hear them fighting. But the actual fist fight, we don't see. The actual declaring of the winner is not what we see. We only see the winner arise. We see ourselves procrastinate, and then we logically say, you're procrastinating, you really should get that done. And then we see ourselves say, I'll procrastinate another day. And we say, how the hell did that happen? How did the decision get made? Yeah, well, obviously the two had a fight. And in this case, whatever, Mr. Spock lost. And there's a reason why it lost, though. Again, this has to do with, I think, this idea that there's always two trains. I mean, this duality thing is not necessarily a bad word. There's lots of dualities. You know, lots of things that are different. Feelings are different than thoughts. And, you know, there are these things that are in conflict. And I think there's a conflict inside of us that's the major two-train kind of idea. That ideas, when they show up, they're thrown on one of the two trains. They're either thrown on the, that's in my self-interest train, that's a keeper, or they're thrown in, whoa, that's a nice piece of logical, that's a nice bit of logical bunnery. Yeah, let's keep that thing. That makes sense. That's logical. Wow, that's cool. Yes, let's keep that little theory. You know, E equals MC squared or whatever. Ooh, that makes, ooh, that's pretty sharp. Yeah, let's keep that on the old logical train. And so then the fight is between these two trains, and the fight happens in our subconscious, and we hear the noise. We hear the, you know, fuck you, we hear them fighting, but we don't get to see the fight. We don't get to see the winning punch that decided what train ends up being our will. So I'm not saying there's a true umpire. I'm just saying there is a fight. The fight happens. There's a reason why somebody wins. Something wins. It's not just show up, throw pie, hope the pie hits the right target. I mean, that's another thing about pie fights, right? You throw the pie and it hits your best friend, and then your best friend throws a pie. You know, you end up fighting with yourself in silly ways. And that doesn't really, again, describe what takes place here. There definitely are sides to the argument happening inside of a human being. Anyway, let's play this.
Gary, whose video, Nick something or other, I've just listened to on my ears. Just after I'd made the video this morning, and coincidentally we've used the same devil and angel on the shoulder thing, but using it at a slightly different angle. And why? Because I think we've used it before, so we've used it again. So it wasn't, you know...
Yeah, well, yeah, and we use it in different forms. I mean, again, we're back to almost my gorilla, you know, reptile, you know, lizard, gorilla, human argument again. The brain players, and yeah, so let's just cut it to the gorilla and the human, and call the human the rational thing, and call the gorilla the selfish fuck.
A magnificent coincidence. Right. Gary, you know all you said in your video was pretty much nothing.
Yeah, well, I don't really agree. Yeah, I don't really agree. I guess you really didn't hear the video very well. Because I think that, you know, I'm not saying it was articulated perfectly, but I think the point I made is a valid point, that through time, the gladiators our brain sets up, the split brain phenomenon of conflict, is always going to be there. Maybe the trains will not be reason and selfishness, maybe it'll be selfishness and double selfishness. You know, maybe some brains aren't going to have the same constituent players, but there's going to be a fight inside. I think that's the way the brain works. I think it forces the contest. That's part of an evolution thing. It's creating a kind of natural selection inside of our brain. And you have to explain natural selection. You don't explain natural selection as a pie fight, right? Because there's definite rules that things have to fit. Things do have to acquire certain skill levels to be players. And you have to have some... You can't just say pie fight. It's just not good enough.
You said, you didn't say I agree with you, but you obviously did, or you would have ranted and raved about it.
Again, that's just, I quite clearly am saying that bun is underdone. I mean, I couldn't make it any clearer. This is not a good enough explanation. Okay, yes, get rid of the I that makes decisions. Yes, we agree on that. We agreed on that 2-3 years ago, okay? But there's still something deciding who wins the contest.
Your only hiccup about it was the chaos that was implied by me using the analogy of a bun fight. Now, you have handily, helpfully translated bun fight into American as pie fight.
Ironically, the British movie, you know, The Great Race was a British movie, right? So that's kind of funny. So maybe we ought to go back to bun fight. Maybe bun fight is a better metaphor. Maybe buns are thrown much more carefully and they never hit your best friend. Maybe I'm not understanding your analogy and that somehow the best man somehow wins the bun fight. Because guess what? Logically, human beings do tend sometimes to do the right thing. They tend to try to be honorable. They tend to be these certain themes. And you can't just say it's by sheer chance that they turned out to do the right thing. No, there's a mechanism. The brain tends to favor that train. It tends to say when something's illogical and stupid, it's just not viable. In spite of the fact that you want to have relations with Tinkerbell, Tinkerbell's 9 inches tall and it's not going to happen, asshole.
And I'm at total loss. It's a total loss, honestly. Alright? in American, in a pie fight, is it different from an English bun fight so much that you have chaotic pie fights? To my...
Again, the argument of chaos was that the victory isn't necessarily something earned, and that the skill level or the ability to throw a pie and to actually hit the target isn't a matter of luck. It's a matter of the thing conforming to a standard. Okay, the best logic wins. It isn't just some sort of crap. There is a continuity built in, maybe, like I said, through our whole conditioning process. Maybe that's where we acquire that understanding of logic. But the fact is, it's applied. And it gives things credibility for good reason. Not just you showed up and you got a big giant Popeye arm and you throw pies hard.
Way bun fight or pie fight, because I can imagine it just the same in American. I can imagine in American pie fight. There's nothing chaotic about that in the slightest degree.
Well, again, I just don't know how you could say that. It's chaos all over. Like I said, nobody, you know, it all gets thrown on everybody else. The bun hits one guy and then bounces off him and hits the other person, and the other person says, "Fuck you, cunt," and throws the, you know, all kinds of chaos. All kinds of misdirection, undirection, and indeliberateness. That's what I meant by chaos. I don't mean the buns go backwards.
It's just not chaotic. It doesn't imply chaos at all.
Okay, again, just play the scene, the pie fight from The Great Race, 5 minutes of pie fight, chaos everywhere.
I don't know what you're up to. But, and I'll let other people in comments, when you think about it, does bun fight in English or pie fight in American imply chaos? If it was a pie fight in chaos, people would be throwing the pies at the ceiling and then throwing the next one at the floor, and then the next one would go...
I'm sure that happens too. People, you know, reach back to throw their pie and somebody else throws a pie into their pie. Or some other kind of crap, you know. Yes, pie goes everywhere. I'm sure some girls throw like a girl and their pie goes straight up in the air. But again, is there really such a thing? The ideas don't show up without, you know what I'm saying? Again, I'm just going to argue, this isn't about how you show up. Okay, this isn't about what you're wearing when you get there. It's about what your credentials are based on the credentialing system. And the credentialing system might be your whole lifetime of experience, and whether or not there's any continuity between this new theory, Tinkerbell is fuckable, and the rational, established premise that, guess what, it isn't going to work. Okay, let it go, buddy. Just let it go. It isn't going to happen.
Sideways and might accidentally hit somebody. But that's not how a pie fight is, and that's certainly not how an English bun fight would go. The bun would be aimed quite carefully. The whole thing is anything but chaotic. It is not chaotic, it's cause and effect. You hit me with a bun. Who did that? Gosh, it was algae. Bun goes back to algae. There's no...
Well, you know, you got a movie title of the bun fight where it works out that way? Because, yeah, I don't think it does. I think you end up throwing the ball at Nigel instead of Algie, and Nigel gets all butthurt, and he thinks that Sue Ellen threw the fucking goddamn thing, so he throws one in her face.
Chaos there. There's no implication of chaos there in my analogy. So, with that known, would you like to... that seemed to be your only problem with... the multiple.
Well, you're still just not getting why I think it's a problem. It's because I don't think it explains the establishing of the hierarchy. And I used the word hierarchy about 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times in my video. There's something that establishes who wins. There's a cause and effect process. And I'm saying, just saying chaos, just implying that it's just this fight and they somehow win, isn't nearly good enough as an explanation of how we develop character and the fact that there seems to be tendencies in our character, which means that the metaphors of a devil and a good guy, a big good guy and a bad guy, a cowboy and an Indian, whatever you want to make them into, the fact that we have this conflict take place inside of us that has a theme to it. It sort of does have a theme. Selfish versus rationality is kind of the theme. And you can see it sort of played out in human history. And you can see that the memes are starting to develop into something that requires that you have a logical excuse for doing things now. We sort of demand a little bit of logic to be in your bullshit. And why is that tendency? And what I'm saying is because I think the brain imposes that structure. It doesn't, there's no I deciding. I'm saying the fight is in your subconscious. You will not see how your logic won or your selfishness won. They will just arise as the decision. But there is a decision process. And the process, to say bun fight is not explaining the process. It's just not good enough. I mean, come on. It's just not an explanation.
A bit me to mention that some of the people might be more arranging than others. They would kind of give more direction to more people. Some of the people might be more logical. Some people might be more whatever.
So you're turning them into people again. So again, this isn't what you're not allowed to say that the idea is more logical, therefore it has more of a throwing arm. Something establishes that. A process has to establish that. So again, I'm just arguing that let's not say bun fight. Let's say there's it's like you have to go through a process to get into the military or something. You have to be a certain height and a certain age, and you have to meet certain standards. And so there's certain tests that new idea pops in, and new idea has to pass these tests to get on one of the goddamn trains. It can't get on one of the trains unless it passes the test. And then if you get enough people on this train will win today. And if you have more people on this train, well then this train will win today. That kind of thing. More ideas, more concepts, more themes, more priorities of the week, let's say. Themes of the week, ideas of the week. So if you have more ideas of the week have fallen into this train, well then this train wins and becomes your will.
And there are kind of arranging programs in the brain there as well. I say to you and everybody else, knock yourself out with imagination, because that's all we can possibly use, of what these various things might be going on in our heads. But they're all just, the point I'm trying to make is you think of a new one, a manager one, or a logical one. Spock standing there going, this is music, is it? Or whatever. Put them all in there. It makes no difference. The point I'm trying to make to Andy is there's all this mass of people in here, and there is no angel talking to the person, devil talking to the person.
And again, that wasn't my argument. I clearly stated there's two gladiators, okay, fighting. Alright, I made that in the final part of my video. I'm just basically saying, and all that changes is their uniform, the texture of them, the attitude of them can mature over time. But that's what's happening, is there's these two themes fighting with each other inside of us. They're in groups. It's a gang war. It's a gang bun fight. They have colors. Okay, it's the Hempsteaders against the, Clod Floppers. It's Hatfield and McCoy.
There's no person that's going to decide between angel and devil. It just will be decided in a bun fight, pie fight sort of way.
Yeah, well that's again where I'm just going to say no, there is no pie fight sort of way that has any kind of standard built into it or any kind of rational hierarchy. So again, you're not establishing credentials. You're just saying somehow the winner wins. And I'm just saying that falls too short of explaining human character. Human character has a shape. It has a tendency, and you have to explain why it has that tendency. And I'm saying it's because this is the arena that it's fighting in, and it's going to force that tendency. You're either going to be a selfish son of a bitch, or you're going to be a motivated son of a bitch. I mean, motivated in some sort of more constructive ways. And which one you're going to be is going to be decided by this whole life experience themes, what's rolling more dominantly inside your head. So it's a numbers game, or it's some other kind of game, but it's not just everybody just shows up and throws buttons.
Is that clearer? Are you happier with that? There are all sorts, and some will be bigger people that can maybe pick up bigger pies, throw bigger pies.
Right, how did they get bigger? So again, there's got to be a way they got bigger. You can't, it doesn't show up as having a size. How does your brain know it's bigger? I mean, how does it make it bigger? It's not a real world. There's no way it can just automatically know it's bigger. That's a good idea. Well, it has to know it for some reason.
Everybody can use their imagination and people this bun fight, pie fight with as many different characters as possible. People, ones standing back totally aloof that won't throw pies, and throw them all in there. Ones that want to put rocks in the pies, I don't care, put them all in there, use your imagination, as long as the thing is grokked. And especially for Andy, who's at the beginning of this grokking and understanding of these things, is that there is no one dominant one.
Well, again, you're saying one dominant one. What you're really arguing is there's no umpire that knows the truth, that knows who's right and who's wrong, and says he's right and you're wrong. Yeah, so there's no I making the decision. The decision is a contest between. And again, I'm just going to argue, though, that the contestants are constructed. They're just not a bunch of chaotic ideas. They're they're ideas that have to be formed and shaped. And they will not exist, I'm arguing. You won't have an idea that exists or maintains itself inside of you unless it's logically sound and then bugs the fuck out of you because it just sounds so fucking right. Or you get $1 million. Somehow it's tied to an idea that you get $1 million somewhere. You're going to keep that idea. If there's some chance that the idea is going to lead to you getting $1 million or finding some way to actually have, intercourse with Tinkerbell, well then yeah, you're probably going to grab that one, and say, yeah, I'll keep that in the house, just in case I can use that later.
There never will be, never will be, never will be, never will be, never has been, isn't, and never will be. And that's the important thing to understand, because our entire language is predicated on that they make films, that some young lad is deciding whether to take the advice.
Well, again, so you're who you're talking to. Like I said, I already know that. I've already conceded that. And I don't think in my video I implied, okay, I don't think I did. I don't think I implied that we umpire the fight. I don't think I did that.
To the devil or the angel. And it's bollocks. It's just not a correct understanding of what is happening. And that is my analogy of the bun fight, which is not chaotic.
Well, first off, it is chaotic. Second of all, it doesn't have any definition or description of how somebody gets their throwing arm or how any of that's acquired. You can't just show up into a brain and say, I'm a bun thrower. That's not going to work. Somehow the brain makes you into a bun thrower. It gives you a license to throw buns. Okay, you just don't walk into the brain and say, I'm going to throw some buns. Alright, now you have to have a license. You have to get qualified. Okay, and it's qualified through a filtering process. It's a real process that takes place. Again, I don't really care whether we establish it as just the brain is logical by nature or whether we establish that it acquires logic through maturation, but it acquires this faculty to be able to see these modeling abstract thingies and those Mr. Spocky kind of ideas, and then it has these Captain Kirk emotional I need, I want kind of ideas, and that these two gangs fight with each other, and the winner is going to be decided in your subconscious based on some sort of standard that probably has to do, what is your theme? What side have you, what side has got more thoughts on it this week? And that baby will probably win.
Yes? Yes. Bye.
So, no. Like I said, I could say, go do the right thing, Gary. Go do the right thing, Gary. Go do the right thing, Gary. Go do... See, now, if I do that enough times in a row, I can, my brain will probably be boosting the numbers on the do the right thing train. It will actually work. The do the right thing train says, I have an idea. Just keep saying do the right thing. And it's like putting fake people on the train. It's like making our train giving our train more gasoline. It's fake gasoline because it's just a mantra, it's just bullshit. But it's going to keep the cycling going. It's going to create maybe some momentum that will create a result in the world. So that's the catch of it all, is that the mechanism that decides the winner is probably built into something that cliche and silly. That, yes, the little bluebird went tweet, tweet, and it sounded like, get off your ass, fucktard! And you said, oh shit, the bird just told me I'm a fucktard and I gotta get off my ass. And so you get off your ass. Somebody else says something, you say, gee, did they just say I smell? Fuck, I better do something about that. Yeah, whatever the thing is, but yeah, it changes which train is gonna win. Yeah, okay. I think that's enough. Look, I don't want to get, we really have such a hard time communicating. I don't think this, has to get obnoxious. I mean, I think, in fairness, you really think bun fight is a way to describe the nuance and the complexity of the result that is human behavior? It's sort of a rhetorical question. No, sorry. No, that's not good enough. And that's all I said. It's not good enough. Gotta do better than that.